to talk about Kennedy. I don't think Lee Harvey Oswald shot him. I think that's pretty much guaranteed. I think that he was probably killed by some sort of...
Hello, and welcome to the Necessary Podcast. How are you? Take a seat. I'm Evan from Necessary Information, and I have a very special podcast for you today, folks. I sit down and talk to one of my favorite channels on YouTube, Eyes Wide Open, an expert on all things CIA, in my opinion. His knowledge both impresses and it makes me a little bit jealous, honestly. He's a great guy. It was a great talk. I learned a lot, and you're about to, too. So, without further ado, enjoy. I've literally, like, so many, like, backup measures now to avoid losing stuff, because thankfully I ended up saving it somehow, but I filmed a 3-hour-long podcast a couple of days ago and thought that I had lost the audio from my guest completely.
Yeah.
Which was I was quite drunk at the end of it, and I was very upset when I saw that it was gone. It was a bad time.
For real, man. Yeah, no, there's nothing worse than losing that. And, you know, I mean, it sounds like it worked out, though. I mean,
yeah.
You got the audio.
I figured it out. I was blessed. Have you ever had any experience with, like, losing a good chunk of work, like YouTube-wise or otherwise?
Only once. And it was actually for part 3 of my series. I don't know if you remember, I did that, like, animated map. It's the only time I've ever tried to do, like, anything kind of, like, sort of animated. There's a little bit of that in my new video coming out, but
oh, cool.
Like, where, like, there's, like, this sort of line that crosses across and shows, like, where, you know, the dope is traveling, essentially. Well, I spent probably 8 hours on that animation the first time around, because I was new to the software and I was just figuring it out, watching YouTube tutorials. And there was one option that I clicked that said format work or reformat work or something. And by this point I was delirious. It was like 1 a.m. I was just like clicking around. And yeah, that essentially cut my entire timeline, deleted it all with no like redo possibility.
That sucks.
Yeah, so that was like 8 hours of work gone. So I had to like completely redo that. But the second time around was much quicker. So
yeah, that's how it always goes for me. Like I had, oh God, the worst one for me was it's a similar state where you're working so long that you're just kind of like not really paying attention to all the details. It can be straining for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
And I like was trying to free up space on my computer, and I saw that my FL Studio like file was taking up like more than 100 gigabytes of space.
Oh, okay,
and
yeah.
I was like in between videos in my head because I had just posted part 5 of the iceberg and I was working on part 6, but I had already recorded like 2 hours of footage for part 6 and had just forgotten about it. Not 2 hours of video, thank God, but just 2 hours of filming. It takes me a lot longer to film with all my takes and stuff than it actually comes on screen.
I can't imagine it, man. I can't imagine it because like even just me with like audio takes, it takes me many tries to get some lines right. I can't imagine with your face in it too. Like they're like, how many times do you do a take and you're like, oh, I don't like how my expressions look in this, and you have to like retake it.
Thankfully, I cannot see myself when I am doing it, and I'm not too worried about it expression wise.
I mean, it's looked great so far. I mean, you've looked very natural on camera. So
thank you. Well, I've been kind of a performer my entire life, but I've definitely gotten a lot more comfortable on camera and on stage after being on camera for so long. Like worked the other way around, which was really nice. But yeah, I had a period for a while where religiously I would do at least 2 takes of every line, because I like in my very first video, I had like a couple of takes that I flubbed and like just really did not want to like set everything back up and record it again for those couple of takes.
Right.
So in my head, for some reason, recording every line twice was totally worth not taking the like, 15 minutes that it takes to set something up and record it again, even though literally it makes it take at least twice as long, the entire process. So I'm trying to get myself out of that, but I found that I have some weird OCD kind of tendencies when it comes to recording specifically, which is kind of like why I don't enjoy it as much as the other parts of the process.
I mean, yeah, I know that I would definitely be like hypercritical if I went on camera. I much prefer just voice. I don't know. It just feels more comforting to me. Like I just feel more like there's that sort of there is a line between like myself and my audience that I don't really want to open up, you know, like I like having that privacy. I like having that distinction. And I also like not having the anxiety of having, you know, to do facial expressions, for example. Like I can do whatever the hell I want behind the mic, you know?
Absolutely. So. I totally get that. And I had 3 videos that were just kind of like shit posts that I would do occasionally before I like decided to start a YouTube channel where it's just audio. And, from doing that is what actually made me decide to record myself, so I didn't have to look for so much damn B-roll and do so much like animation and stuff like that.
Oh, you're telling me, brother. You're telling me. Jesus. That's the longest process, is finding all the B-roll.
Mm-hmm. I love these kind of podcasts. I hope that other people out there will be enjoying it. Hopefully other aspiring YouTubers as well. I really like the Official Podcast has a lot of inside baseball between YouTubers.
Yeah. I mean, I've listened to some of these kinds of podcasts before, especially like before I started. Like the biggest thing to me is thumbnail design, and I'm still not like that good at it. I think that's somewhere where I'm trying to improve. Because I think I actually do think that thumbnail is the most important part of the video. Funny enough, just getting somebody to click on it, I think YouTube like really values that stat over even retention. But this is really inside baseball now. Like I feel like unless people that are listening are YouTubers, this is all going through one ear out the other. But
I don't even mind. That did make me realize that we haven't even introduced you yet, though.
Oh,
or, like, done a proper open or anything. So I might just do like a quick introduction, like post. I'll just throw it in at post. But if you want to tell the audience who you are, go ahead.
Yeah. So I run the channel Eyes Wide Open since March of this year. I've been making the History of the CIA YouTube series, which is a series of documentaries going into details about the history of American intelligence, American clandestine history. We touch on a lot of other things as well, just sort of security state in general, law enforcement, anything that's sort of tangentially connected to this sort of story of American intelligence. Because I've never said this on camera, but I fundamentally do believe that the history of the CIA is a parallel history to traditional American history. And I'm never trying to say that traditional American history is not real or is not as important. I think that these two things, these two sort of historical lines work in tangent to explain each other in a really interesting way. So I'm trying to sort of tell that story of the history of the CIA, but always tie it back to sort of the more traditional high school history class explanation of American events.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find that there's many things that I find interesting and unique about your content. And that's definitely one of them, is just because, you know, when I listen to your breakdowns, they're so, I don't want to say linear because they can be non-linear and bounce around and stuff, but
yes.
your through line is just really good. Mine is, you know, I'm just covering an iceberg, so they're bouncing between time periods constantly, and I'm mostly trying to do it for entertainment value.
Yep.
If you guys are actually interested in the necessary information that has to be provided about the CIA, definitely go check out Eyes Wide Open. I have a lot of people that's like in my comment section like, man, I really like what he's telling me and the information, but can he stop making Family Guy tier jokes every 30 seconds? And it's like, no, I can't. It's like, it's a disease. I can't stop. Yeah, I when I'm listening to you talk about that stuff, I'm always kind of picturing other events that are going on at the time and just kind of how this stuff was going on behind the scenes and had so much of an impact on American world history, really. Like it's like a cornerstone of everything that's influencing everything else is just the CIA and the deep state in general.
Yeah. I mean, it really, I think it really, like, taking this peek behind the curtain really exposes kind of the motivations and how, to me, everything is, it's fairly, not simplistic, but fairly rudimentary, that it's just about, you know, expanding hegemony, keeping control, keeping historical resource relationships intact, and looking at, for example, you know, the traditional history, like looking at you know, Korea, Vietnam, Iran-Contra, even, you know, trickles into traditional histories. It can seem a little bit insane. And I mean that in a way where it's like, you know, especially, you know, like I'm 25 years old. I'm Gen Z, barely, but you know, to me, like looking back at this sort of Cold War mentality, it just seems insane, right? It seems like it's built on this premise that fundamentally, like now looking in 2023, seems hard to justify. But you know, when we understand that second part of the story, that what the CIA was doing, what the Pentagon was doing, et cetera, it starts to, you know, the pieces start to fall together as to what the real intent was in these different conflicts. So I hope that wasn't too confusing or vague, but that's the way I see it fundamentally.
No, you put that really well. I honestly wouldn't guess. I don't know if this sounds good or bad. I wouldn't guess that your videos are completely scripted because you sound so natural when you're saying it. It almost feels like you're just going off of like bullet points or something. Like what you just said there. I totally felt like I could have been listening to one of your videos. But I actually have a theory about why just people in general were so goddamn insane for that time period. I really do blame leaded gasoline for like I've made that joke a few times in my videos. I am completely 100% serious about that. Like people were being poisoned during a very developmental period of their life through lead being in the atmosphere constantly. And we are all being poisoned now to this day through stuff that we probably don't even understand. But Absolutely. Like that was a very, like, you can see it on charts. You can see the difference between people living in different areas of the country. And it's concerning to me still that most of the people running the country and the world, for that matter, are this same generation of people that were literally had a neurotoxin in their lungs every second of every day for their entire childhood, you know? And those are still the people that are running everything.
Yeah. I mean, we really don't know, like, what we are inhaling every day. I mean, I think these days about the wildfires a lot.
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of studies that have been done about the effects of smoke on sort of brain development and brain chemistry. So I don't know what that has for us in the future, but I mean, your view on leaded gasoline, I mean, I could say lead pipes as well could be seen as a potential as well. I know there was a massive push, I believe in the 60s or 70s. I might be off on this, on a massive, you know, push by, I believe, the Department of Infrastructure on retrofitting old homes for lead pipes. So two types of lead there, you know, lead gas, lead pipes.
Same thing happened in the Roman Empire. I mean, people used to use lead for seasoning, like flavoring to make things taste sweeter.
And, the lead plates, famously.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's what I heard, anyways.
That's one I definitely buy it. I mean, they were just kind of just doing the same things that we were, just with less of a scientific method to be able to see if they were, you know, harming themselves with it. They were just in this unprecedented period of growth and development that all kind of went to shit into a dark ages that I think that we will mirror. I'm a bit of a doomer.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard not to be when you're into this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Romans had, you know, air conditioning. I mean,
really?
they had this system. I remember reading about it. It was like, at least patricians did, anyways. They had these systems of sort of like air ducts in their house that would cool the air through flowing it beside a stream of cool water. Really insane stuff, you know, like real, like forward thinking. And it's interesting now talking about the Roman Empire, just because, you know, there's this whole meme going around, you know, with the girlfriends asking their boyfriends, you know, how often do you think of the Roman Empire? And to me, anyways, it's like once a day. And I'm like, what does that say about me? You know,
that's hilarious. That's really funny that you think about it that often, because I've been talking about this video to people and they've been like, yeah. And I'm not on TikTok or really any sort of social media or short form content. The only reason that I know about this whole Roman meme thing was because my girlfriend told me about it. When I was telling her that I was thinking about taking a break from the iceberg and doing a Rome video. She's like, oh, you gotta, because, you know, you gotta. And she's,
I mean, you're striking the iron when it's hot right now.
Not really. All my videos take so long to produce that it's probably going to come out when it's not, like, when it's stale and people are like, ugh, more Rome content. It's like wearing white after Labor Day or something, the equivalent YouTube wise. But every day, huh? Seriously? Like I'm just genuinely curious, because I think for me, it's obviously I'm making a video about it right now. So when I was writing it, it was constantly, but I think on my my standard self, I probably think about the Roman Empire maybe like once a week.
I mean, that's probably the healthier amount of time to think about the Roman Empire, honestly. Like, I seriously don't know what it says about me. I mean, I read, and like, if any of my viewers are listening to this might, like, I don't know. Anyways, I read a lot of Wikipedia, like a ton of Wikipedia.
Me
Like,
too.
I'm on there probably like on a regular day when I'm not editing, probably like 6 hours, like of just
Wow.
reading and clicking blue links, clicking. So like, inevitably I'm always back to the Roman Empire. I mean, you know, it's just there. It's so, I mean, you know, you're reading about Italian Gladio 1 second, and the next second, you know, you're reading about, you know, some emperor in 300 AD or whatever. So maybe I think about it more just because I read more history than
You are a true historian for sure.
I mean, I try my best anyways. It's pretty hard to, I'm kind of like coming to a point now where I'm like, is anything real? Like, is anything true? Like, what is truth? You know, you have these questions, or like I have these questions anyways, because there's just so many competing narratives about everything that it's like, what is truth? If just because some guy wrote this down, does this make it real? You know, like digging into footnotes. There's more that goes into the research of my videos than it may seem. Like I try to bring a level of fact that I myself can be proud of, but that I know that I've like done the due diligence to make sure that what I'm saying is based in some sort of material fact. But still, you know, what is true?
I can tell you that everything you say is based, so you don't have to worry about that.
Well, I mean, as long as it's based, right?
It's based on what we'll never know, but it's based. I applaud you for that. I know when I first listened to your first, I actually at first, like, I hate to admit this, I was listening to your first video, like when I was kind of doing initial research and digging around on a lot of stuff for the CIA, kind of like before I even made the first part or something. Yeah. And the intro and like the audio being low, I like stopped watching it for a while and was like, I don't know, like I don't want to listen to this. But then I was like, damn, that actually seemed like it was gonna go really hard. So I like went back to it and I waited to like get home so where I could like get a different where I could turn something up louder because I just couldn't hear it at work where I was at on my phone. And you're like one of my favorite YouTube channels now. So
well, thanks, man. No, I really appreciate it. And you're really not the only one that doesn't like that first video. Let me tell you, I have been thinking hard about remaking that video into like a full 1 hour expose, just like much more in depth. People, you know, okay, and like people have gotten so mad at me for saying Pearl Harbor was caught by surprise by Pearl Harbor, or the U.S. was caught by surprise. That one has lived with me to this day. I've thought about making a video just about Pearl Harbor to kind of like engage with that idea, because I think I did oversimplify it. But then again, like, I think people fail to remember as well when they watch that video that like this was my first attempt at making anything like this. Like if you take this one, like this first part, and you compare it to, let's say, like the part I'm about to release on Wednesday, I think it just goes to show like how much I've learned so far already on how to make, you know, a thorough documentary, where my mind is as well. I think a lot of people also got turned off, and I would go back and change my wording on this about me singling out Trump and Trump voters. I think was a mistake, because I think I wasn't clear enough about what I meant. I was more talking in a sense that a lot of the talk about the deep state nowadays is not rooted in any kind of material analysis. It's based more just in this sort of like emotive sort of anger towards the elite. And
which is, I mean, that's a Trumpian, you know, that's
absolutely
kind of a core tenet of his followers.
Absolutely. And I think that it fundamentally being angry at the elite or having some sort of resentment for the elite, I think is a fair position. It's a fair position. But you can't use this term deep state selectively and just put in the guys that you don't like.
Yeah.
That's essentially what I was trying to say. That like, it's not a partisan thing. It's not a, it's actually this might even be crazy to say, it's not really a political thing in general. It's very like apolitical, and that's essentially what I was trying to say.
It's just a power thing, I'd say, not necessarily. I mean, it kind of brings both sides of the aisle together, in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
The deep state, from my understanding.
Like the focus of my videos is not so much on where the parties disagree; it's where they agree, right? And that's sort of my main focus in my research is that. And I do regret singling out, going for partisan talking points in that video. I mean, I was fairly inexperienced. I didn't really know how broad my audience would be either, so I didn't really understand where I was going with that. So I do regret that. I do regret saying that, and I do regret not expounding on what my point was, and just seeming like, like just like a run of the mill, lib, if I'll say that, So.
I feel you there. I definitely have both sides of the aisle in my comment section. I think that mine probably lean a bit more left than yours would, even, because I feel like a lot of those people that might be offended by that I know exactly the Trump remark you're talking about, because I just used that clip in.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah. Are the kind of people that would be very interested in your content, because that's kind of like, I mean, you're telling it like how it is. You know what I mean? Like, you're basically taking the type of, like, you're educating the type of people that would watch Alex Jones. You know what I mean? Not your entire audience, but I'm sure that, like, those are the types of people that would be interested in that would also be interested in your content and have been interested in specifically the CIA stuff with my content.
I mean, some, right? And I think that, like, we don't want to talk about Alex Jones too much, because I know that, like, YouTube hates even hearing the name Alex Jones, but
they hate too much stuff for me to worry about podcast wise.
True.
So I've decided I'm gonna let these be. The videos I've had to do some major work on since I had a demonetization apocalypse, but
like I'm not even monetized, so like I don't even try. I mean, honestly, I think that puts me more at risk of getting my channel taken down, even if I go through the process. That's my personal perspective, anyways.
You'll have to get the review and stuff.
Exactly, and like, I feel like as long as there's no ads on my videos, YouTube doesn't really care, because it's really fundamentally about advertising. That's why they're doing all this censorship. It's not about. I do feel like that there are some elements of politics involved, but I think it is fundamentally about keeping the advertiser's bottom line and ensuring that their products are being shown on videos that are advertiser friendly. Essentially,
I agree with you there. I think that keeping it unmonetized can kind of have the same effect, because they don't really have any reason to show your videos from a business standpoint, because there aren't ads on them.
Yes.
So, I know that you're kind of keeping it demonetized to keep it up and to try not to get like shadow banned from them not wanting ads to be on, like advertiser unfriendly content. But also at the same time, got to consider that not having ads on anything means that they have no reason to show your stuff from a business point of view. And honestly, your stuff, it's not like it's, I don't know if they would perceive it as like conspiracy or as political. Like, I see your stuff as historical, as a history channel. You know what I mean? Like, as an educational history channel. And I personally don't think that I know that you had that, so Eyes had a video about, mainly about substances and, the CIA's involvement with them, and that got age restricted because YouTube has a rule against really any talk about drug trade organizations is how they phrase it in their guidelines. I also had a video get the only video I've had age restricted was about a drug trade organization. So I know you had that, but I do think that the majority of your videos would be monetized as is, and that they would be showing ads on them.
Yeah, it's interesting on that that video I made about substances. My next video and my next 4 videos are going to be about substances, which makes me a little worried. But at the same time, like, I think there are other factors, and you actually brought this up in a Twitter DM that it might have been the thumbnail that did to the naked eye or to some whatever AI algorithm they have could have looked like blood, right? It could have looked like gore.
I think that may have been somebody else. I think that may have been somebody else that told you that.
Maybe I'm misremembering. Yeah, but there was also I did have a lot of footage as well of people using substances as well. So
yeah, I've had a video demonetized for once. I used one scene from Pulp Fiction of him getting the gear and like doing stuff, and they specifically, when I requested a manual review, said, you know, you can't have use in the video, which obviously I should know. It's like every time they like clip me for something, it's like, well, yeah, I should have thought that like that's not, you know, monetizable, but at the same time it's like I'm trying to make what I consider to be like art here, and I don't really want to think about, you know, advertiser restrictions, but that's just comes with the territory if you want to make money.
Yeah, like I had to get really creative with this new one. Like I don't say the word heroin once. And you can bleep me for that one.
I'm not going to worry about the podcast stuff. It's too much to worry about.
Like I didn't use that word once. And I got pretty creative with my clip selection to try to, like, you know, use images that evoke those substances without actually showing videos of them. So hopefully it passes. If it doesn't, I might honestly try to re-edit it and try it again. But at this point, it's like my core viewers will check and they'll watch my videos. So that's really the important thing.
Absolutely. You know, man, now that I'm putting more thought into it, I think that it would be a good idea to get it monetized. I know that the initial check is scary, but when you are monetized, you can run checks on your videos before you put them out. So like when I go to put out a video, you do a self-check where you turn on monetization when you upload, and then you say if it includes, you know, censored profanity, blah blah blah, and it gives you options to be like uncensored profanity, like this is not monetizable basically on the self check. And then it does its actual check and it'll give you YouTube's review before you even post it. And obviously it does, you know, a check for age restricted content as well, although I believe age restriction is more of a manual review thing once, because people will review your videos even if they haven't been flagged by the automated system. Either way, I've been using this system to, I definitely don't want to say get around monetization, but I guess I should say to make sure that my videos are good for YouTube and are advertiser friendly, wherein I will use the checking system. And it used to be that all of my videos would immediately be deemed by the automatic system to be demonetized. So I would do a manual review on them. The person would watch it and be like, this is fine. And now they have a if your self rating is accurate enough, they just use your rating off the gate. And I had a lot of videos that were monetized, like the first 2 parts of my iceberg that were monetized from their automatic checks. And then a manual reviewer comes along and is like, no money for you. So I rate the video as not monetizable, and then I do a check. So all of my videos are manually reviewed before I post them, basically. And I think that's
a good idea.
Yeah. I don't know how much YouTube likes that, but I personally, I don't think that there's anything wrong with doing that. Like, I'm just trying to make sure on my end that I'm being paid for a lot of hard work, but also it's good on YouTube's end because I'm not putting out content that goes against their guidelines. I'm literally forcing a manual review to make sure that my stuff is going to be okay in their eyes for advertising. So, you know, I hope that they never at me for that, for talking about that on air.
I mean, I think you'll be okay. I honestly think that, like, their system is probably very imperfect, and it's just comes down to having that manual review and flagging it for YouTube to check. Because I mean, there's millions of videos that get uploaded every day. They're probably err more on the cautious side than on the more open side, just fundamentally because of just how much content gets uploaded. But at the same time, man, I'm like, this stuff's so strict. It's so strict. It's like
in the weirdest ways too.
Yeah, like what you said about drug smuggling organizations or whatever, right? I'm like, this is pretty out in the open now. Like like after the 80s and after Iran-Contra, like there's really no questions anymore about this being at least something that the CIA engaged in, right? Like it's basically on the record. So why are we still seeing this pushback? It's really, it seems like it is an attempt to control the narrative at a certain degree and to make sure that this stuff doesn't get talked about.
I don't you mean from like a YouTube, like YouTube age restricting the like drug trade organization content perspective? Like,
Yeah,
is that
like
they don't want...
I mean, like I don't even talk about consumption. I don't talk about
Yeah.
you know, any kind of, you know, like I don't even really talk about the narcotics themselves. Like
Yeah.
I don't even, like it's not a dangerous video in the sense that it's promoting the use at all. I'm quite open in my videos about being, you know, against this whole paradigm. Like it's quite negative for the world.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
It's not like
as
you're
I'm
saying,
sure,
"Ayo, I love the CIA dishing out that cheap heroin."
No, there's nothing better than the Golden Triangle, brother. Let me tell you.
That shit goes hard.
Yeah, no, like it just confuses me because it's like, but I guess it shouldn't confuse me. Like, you know, maybe I'm being naive, but
No, I think that they're not. I don't know. YouTube, I think, especially at its inception, was there just to have people make content and stuff, and it started out with these really altruistic goals, and now they have to deal with advertisers used to television, where they can review every piece of content and put notes in directly with the producers to be like, change this because, you know, this toilet paper company doesn't want you to say shit here. You know, it might make people want to go shit with somebody else's toilet paper or something.
Yeah,
you know, they have so much control that they've just really just kind of fucked YouTube into fucking over its creators, and YouTube's been doing better about it. They've been making some good changes lately, which I'm really happy to see. But I don't necessarily think that it would be YouTube trying to like control the narrative for like the deep state or like the CIA to be like, you know, we don't want the information that they are, you know, doing all these things that they're doing with substances. I think it's just more advertisers just wanting to steer clear of drugs and violence and stuff in general, and how they classify drug trade organizations as kind of as relating to drugs and violence as you can get, you know, which
yeah. I mean, it's strange though, right? Because you'll have a video, you know, about for example, you know, about the Holocaust that will get monetized, and of course, you know, that's very important, and that's you know, it's important to have these historic, you know, accounts on video, and I'm all for it. But that's an equally, you know, if not much greater depiction of violence on screen and shocking, right? And I mean, any other number of atrocities, you know, could get monetized, right? But it's the certain events that can't be, that it's. And I often talk about this, that, like, you know, I don't think that they're in a smoke-filled room talking with the CIA about, okay, what are we allowed to talk about and what are we allowed to monetize, right? I don't think it's like that. But I think that there is a certain symbiosis there where, you know, at the end of the day, these topics are not marketable for a reason.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand it when looking at it from that perspective. It's always just frustrating as a creator. It's interesting that you kind of bring up the Holocaust and like Nazi stuff. They are actually they are quite sensitive about that, but I think that they used to have a very hardline stance from my talks with YouTubers that have been doing this a much longer time, where they would get their YouTube, like any mention of World War II, like in general, might get their video demonetized.
That's insane.
Like Mr. Beat, I think I've talked to you, but that I've talked to him about some stuff, and you know, he has had lots of issues with demonetization, and he's a clean ass dude. He is a super clean YouTuber, and it's just the topics that he has talked about. 9/11, they are like anything relating to that is done. Like, just the fact that I said it in this video will probably mean that it will get demonetized, even though I'll probably do the manual check with it and all that. But the channel I'm posting it on right now isn't even monetized, so I don't have that option. Posting it on a second channel, it only has like 900 subs or something. But how quickly did you get to 1,000 subs, by the way? Like
I had, well, it's not really fair. I had 900 when I started. Because
of the previous videos.
Yeah, so I started making videos in high school, actually. And back then it was just like, very normie kind of like geography, history stuff. Like I go back and watch those videos from time to time just to like reminisce. And the Switzerland video actually has a huge like mistake in it that still gets commented on quite a bit. And that's fine. But at the end of the day, like I was making them for fun back then. I actually, I wanted to continue to make videos, and then I went to university, and life kind of got in the way, and I've kept telling myself like every single year I was like, oh, I'm gonna bring back Everything You Need to Know, start making videos again. And throughout those 7 odd years, I progressively got more into like Cold War history, CIA history. I've always been like really into history and geography. Geography, actually, I'm almost more into than history in a lot of ways, especially flags. Like I'm a flag god. Like I'll say that out of the gate. Like I love flags. It's like a strange obsession. And that's originally what I got into YouTube with. And then now, like with this history stuff, I've just read so much about it, and I saw so little actually like so little content on YouTube that actually just gets to the bottom of it. It's just like, okay, like this is actually what's going on here. Like not like, oh, the CIA was, helping the Americans in Vietnam with certain operational missions, right? Like what were they actually doing? What are the actual consequences of these actions? How does it fit into the larger narrative? I was not seeing that anywhere. So I decided to give it a go. And yeah, here we are now, I guess. I've gotten way deeper than I thought I would. I'm now, like, when I first started this, I was like, okay, I'm just kind of going to spitball it. Like, I'm just going to go off of, like, sources that I've already read and just kind of tell the story as I understand it. And then I just kept unraveling and unraveling and unraveling. And now we're at a point now where I make 1-hour-long videos about 1-year events that are so, like, so obscure that, like, I'm just like going so deep for sources on this stuff. Like this new one that's about to come out, I'm actually probably the most proud of my research on. I think that I really went to some depths that even I didn't think that I would be able to find stuff for. Like I've got some great like diplomatic cables that are super obscure, and you can try to search them up on Google and they just don't show up. Like you need to go deep into the like. Anyways, I'm very excited for this next video, just from a research point of view. I think it's one of my best so far.
That's great to hear, man. I respect the hell out of that, because that's super cool. That's super cool that you're like pulling documents that you can't even really find on the surface web. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Like you had to go, like how did you actually get like your eyes on those?
So there are URLs to these. They are on government websites. It's just if you punch in the names of the people in this memo and like the subject of the memo, it will not show up in Google searches. Like it's they're I don't know if this is something that they've designed it this way, or if they're just so sort of marginal in terms of people searching for them. But they just don't show up in Google searches. Like I found one in like a footnote to an essay that I was able to pull out extra information from. One I found, I bought this book recently about, that was sort of a summary of the Pentagon Papers, which in the, I guess, early 70s, I want to say, bunch of, early 70s, like late Nixon era, a lot of, sort of a massive dossier of Vietnam-related files were leaked to the Washington Post, and these include all the way back to like the early 1950s and late 40s about American policy on Vietnam. So in this book, they make mention of a diplomatic cable that is being referred to in a like policy piece within the Pentagon Papers. So anyways, like I had to go and like dig and find the like box on the Truman Library website where this damn cable is stored, and turns out it's quite fascinating. I mean, turns out, basically the, embassy official in Thailand basically like outlines the entire scheme that they had been setting up there in no uncertain terms. It's once you start to look into this stuff, it's like people aren't really trying to hide it. Like sorry, I'm kind of rambling at this point, but a part that I find really frustrating about this whole field is that people are like, oh, if all this is true, wouldn't have somebody have said something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, people do say it all the time. Like it's quite open if you look for it. So that's where I'm most proud, is that I've actually found some like actual primary documents of people explaining the policy of the United States that is backed up by secondary sources as well. So yeah, so it feels pretty good once all the pieces come together.
I'd be proud of that work, man. I'd be super proud of your work, because, like, you know, there's definitely a juxtaposition in. I think if I had not just on a whim decided to talk about the CIA, you know, our channels would not, you know, have some sort of connection, just in that you know, before I was talking about the CIA, I was talking about like huffing shit, and and like weird shit that rock stars did. And then I guess the my hippie mafia video, which is about the Brotherhood of Eternal Love, if you're familiar with them.
I haven't actually heard of that.
Really? You'd find it fascinating.
Yeah.
I would absolutely say so. Yeah. So it was basically a cult that was registered as a, you know, religious organization for tax purposes mostly, I think, that was a massive LSD distribution operation run out of Laguna Beach in California throughout the 60s. And it involves, you know, Timothy Leary going over there and basically becoming like their figurehead, their public-facing VP, and then he runs for governor while being the figurehead for a massive drug organization.
Yeah.
And I find that period fascinating in general, late 60s, early 70s, hippie era America. And it's a story that I also just could not find anything about online. And I guess I know why, because it's my only video that's been age restricted, and the views just like just leveled as soon as it got age restricted. It's just done. It doesn't show it anywhere. But it's super interesting stuff if you ever have a chance to look into it. The Brotherhood of Eternal Love.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely have to check it out, because I find that period quite fascinating as well. And that milieu, like specifically, like, you know, California, hippie, you know, the hippie movement and, you know, free love and all that stuff, right? Have you looked into like Charles Manson at all?
Well, I think I mentioned it to you a long ways ago that I was hoping to do a video like entirely on the CIA's connections to Charles Manson.
Yeah.
And I think I reached out to you and you were like, well, I'm also working on that myself. So it would be like, you know, yeah, that's going to be super cool. I'm really excited for yours, because you are just able to go a lot more in depth than I am. What do you do outside of YouTube? I'm curious.
Man,
don't like at yourself if you don't feel comfortable, but I'm just.
I'd rather not talk about what I do outside of YouTube. I do really value my anonymity. I make a big effort online to stay anonymous. We all deal with paranoia. We all deal with that, with those emotions, and I'd rather not talk about it. You know, like at the end of the day, like I'm really into movies, music. I'm a big football fan. Go Bills, and yeah, that's about it. Honestly, like outside of work, or out of YouTube, outside of work, I'm a fairly like stay-at-home guy. Like I don't get up to too much. I work on videos, I watch movies, hang out with my roommates. That's about it. I
guess if you're comfortable with answering this, because it's really the only thing that was so like, would you say that in your profession, like you devote like more than 40 hours of your week like toward a totally separate, you know, thing that you have to do for money?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I do this part-time.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's impressive, man. You get a lot done. Because I personally know that it is very difficult for me to keep running with a 40-hour a week job and trying to grow the YouTube channel and trying to take care of myself and have friends and a girlfriend at the same time. So
well, yeah, we were talking about that earlier, like a little bit, like how I don't know if you feel this, like every second that you're not working on a video, you're like, it feels like, it almost feels like a second job, you know? And I don't mean that in a negative way, because I would really love to do this full time and be able to devote myself fully to it. But at the same time, like having this as a second priority, it definitely adds an element of like an element of work to this, and making it feel like a second job, which essentially it is. I do treat it that way. I treat it as I need to put in a certain amount of hours every week into working on this. I need to, if it either it's researching or if it's recording or it's writing, right? I need to devote a certain amount of time to it to ensure that videos get out at this rate once a month, essentially. But yeah, like I wish I could devote myself fully, because if I could do this full time, I could probably release 2 a month, which would be great.
That's what I want to shoot for when I'm able to do it full time. I'm planning on, man, I'm the initial plan was to go full time in January, but I'm getting real burnt out, so I think I might, me going full time involves a move across the country to be somewhere with cheaper living. So, there'll probably be a break in my productivity during that time. So it may be more like December, January, but I'm hopefully going to go full time in November.
It's the other thing for me, man. Like I feel the same way, because like, I'm Canadian, and the housing here is insane. Like it's insanely expensive. So it's like, I was doing the math, and I'm like, to be able to just like afford my basic livelihood, like I'm just not there yet. Like I'm not close enough. I need to pay my bills. I need to ensure that I have the livelihood that I need to at least afford, rent, utilities, basic stuff, car payments, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I just feel like I'm in this mode now where I won't be able to devote myself full time to this at this period, and I don't have any plans to for now. Like if it happens that way, it does, but at the end of the day, like we live in an expensive country here. You live in an expensive country as well in certain places, or most places, we'll say now. I mean,
I live in a very expensive city. The public knows what city I live in. I live in Austin, Texas, so it's it's very expensive, and that's why I need to move to be able to do it full time.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I feel as well about it. And it's like, I mean, we just live in expensive times, and I mean, you got to make ends meet at the end of the day. It's not like, and I don't know.
I mean, like you said, your channel's not monetized, so I mean, it's pretty difficult to, get to.
I'm gonna take your advice. I'm gonna try monetizing it. And
I would hate to be the guy that like tells you to monetize it and then something goes wrong in the review process, but I mean, like, I don't know. I just, knowing that my channel is monetized, especially with what I had on the channel at that time, like, I don't know. I just can't see them in good faith, like not pushing you through. And you get access to a lot more tools and help once your channel is monetized. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Just don't blame me if anything goes wrong, brother. I get best of luck. I'm praying for you with that.
No, thank you.
It's always scary.
Honestly, like I've started experimenting with Patreon a little more, and I'm thinking about ways that I could sort of leverage that platform better as well, to give more incentives for people to make that leap. Because it is very helpful. I'm super thankful to my patrons. They really help make ends meet and help me, sort of mitigate the costs of buying books is the big one. Like these videos take a lot of research and a lot of reading, so it's really appreciated for that. As it is now, like it's paid for my new mic, which has been super helpful. So it at least helps to mitigate the costs involved in improving the channel, right? I mean, like that's the way I see it now, which has been super helpful.
That's kind of the way that I'm looking at, because I'm also trying to get creative with the Patreon stuff. That's kind of what spawned the podcast, was me wanting to get fans on and get some money in that way. And I feel a bit dirty about like charging $150 for somebody to like talk to me on air. My time is money, but like I just like I'm thinking of it I'm doing it for people that enjoy my content, which obviously somebody paying $150 to come on my podcast enjoys my content quite a bit. I'm doing it so that I can make more content for them, twice as much content for them as soon as I can quit my job, And with my job, I am able to work on YouTube for a good portion of my day at my job, in front of a computer, and I have a lot of downtime, and it's a night job, so I'm there until 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
Like half the week, 3 out of the 4 days that I'm there. And they're like 10-hour shifts and whatnot. So, I already do get a lot. Like I do a lot of YouTube like maybe 40 hours a week in total. But, you know, I will be doing a lot more when I, you know, so I don't know. It still feels weird to me though to be charging people for stuff like that. But I mean, it's what you got to do as a influencer sometimes.
Definitely. And, you know, like I always position my Patreon as fully, you know, optional for now anyways, to get all the content. Like, you know, you get it a week early. You're helping me out. That's really like the way I frame it to my viewers, and those that have joined on the Patreon, I think view it that way, that it's really just an extra bonus, a donation, as you'll see, to help my work and to help me continue to make these videos. But yeah, like I guess to help my work and to help me continue to make these videos. But yeah, like I guess to talk about Kennedy, like I
forgot that we were supposed to. I was really excited for that. We kind of talked beforehand, and decided that we wanted to talk about JFK and everything revolving around that situation. I totally forgot. Spaced on that. What a good host I am. Now I'd love to. Please get into it. Yeah.
No, and I just wanted to start I'm thinking about how I want to do this like Kennedy series for my channel, because I've been like I've been teasing to it so much at this point. Like it's like every video I'm like, oh, if there's like a Kennedy connection to this, I'll throw it in. Why not, right? Like, and it'll be fun to talk about it. But like I'm like thinking about it now, I'm like, how am I going to put this thing together? Because it seems so daunting now that I'm going to be building up to it so much that I'm like, I don't want to leave anything out. Is it going to just take over the channel where it's just going to be like, oh, Kennedy assassination for a year? Like, you know,
that's how I feel about the iceberg for sure.
Yeah. And then, you know, that then leads right into Watergate, and it's like, anyways. So in that sense, like I've been thinking about that a lot and thinking about how I want to implement that on the channel. So hopefully sooner than later too. I really want to get there. Like that's my main research interest. Like that's what I really like, my bread and butter. Like that's where I've like done most of my research is Kennedy stuff. So I really am just looking forward to get there to give my own personal perspective on everything as well. So
well, I'd love if you would enlighten me and the audience on your personal perspective, because that is an area of research with the CIA that I find daunting, just because of how many moving parts there are going on and how much stuff is covered up and all that. So, you know, I'd be curious, just, I guess, in the answer of the question, what do you think happened to JFK? Does not have to be short and sweet. I just like go ahead.
I mean, I don't think Lee Harvey Oswald shot him. I think that's pretty much guaranteed. I think that he was probably killed by some sort of CIA mob plot. I think, and I honestly, like, my questions that I'm more interested in than how is why, right?
That was going to be my next question. Yeah,
I find that much more interesting. Like, not to say that like all the ballistic stuff and all the, you know, magic bullet and all the, you know, all the sort of accounts of Oswald afterwards aren't interesting, and I'm not going to touch on them, but I find it way more interesting to sort of ask, why did this act even happen, and why was there a alleged conspiracy surrounding it, right? And I keep bouncing around because there's a lot of different reasons why. I mean, the main one that people talk about is Cuba, and I think that that's sort of the obvious answer. Yeah, you know, that it's this as Nixon said, you know, it's the whole Bay of Pigs thing, right? I mean, it's I mean, at the end of the day, that was a big moment for Kennedy of standing up to the CIA and essentially standing up as well to the mafia across the United States that had massive financial ties to Cuba and massive financial investments in Cuba in the casinos, but also potentially in the substance trade as well, that I'll get into later in this series. But I think it was about Vietnam, fundamentally. I don't know. I still wrestle with the idea, as I think every single Kennedy researcher does, about whether the United States would have entered Vietnam if Kennedy had survived for a second term. But I do fundamentally think that it came down to that, and it came down to the United States was so ready to enter Vietnam at the end of Eisenhower's presidency. It was looking so good for them to get in there. There was so much built up supply too, in terms of, you know, the military industrial complex had Korea in the 50s. And then we're talking about, 1953-ish when Korea ended, 7 years, right, to Kennedy. And there had not really been any major wars or any major, way to spend that supply, right? I mean, we're talking, a country that is deeply dependent on the arms industry by this point, deeply interlinked in a lot of ways, and that continued to grow throughout the entire history of the United States, throughout the Cold War. But there needed to be sort of they needed to undo a valve to let out all that pressure. They were building up armaments for a war that needed to happen, right? Mm-hmm. It's the story as old as time, even like, a lot of people say World War I, it's like it was due to just the militarization of Germany and Great Britain, that fundamentally that was one of the theories, right? It was hyper-militarization. And with me, it's that Kennedy was very hesitant about entering Vietnam, and that was just untenable. It was untenable.
Yeah, that's aspect of it that I hadn't considered, because I also am very curious as to the why, because as far as the how, kind of like you're saying, I think that the CIA connections are covered up, but kind of obvious once you start digging into things. And then the mob connections are just a gangster shot the guy that they said shot him, immediately, in a closed garage with a whole bunch of police officers and reporters and everything everywhere. I mean, it's just. But I hadn't considered the military-industrial complex angle, and that makes a lot of sense, knowing, just how the deep state in this country works and how tied it is to keeping that capitalist machine running, and how keeping the elites happy, and how tied the military-industrial complex is to both of those goals.
There's only one industry that's in all 50 states, and that's the arms industry.
Really? In what capacity? Like all 50 states have
some sort of link to a defense firm. Have some sort of employer that is a defense firm. Be it Lockheed Martin, be it Raytheon, be it whatever other arms manufacturer. It's embedded in every single one of the 50 U.S. states. And it's funny, right? Because like Eisenhower leaves office and he says, "Oh, the military-industrial complex. It's this real thing. It's something that we need to be wary about." Mm-hmm. And my personal perspective on that actually is that Eisenhower realized throughout his time in office that Korea was a stalemate, but it was fundamentally a failure, right? I mean, they were not able to achieve the military objectives that were set out, right, which was pushing the communists out of Korea. At the end of the day, it got split. It's still split to this day. Mm-hmm. So Eisenhower, a military man, was looking at Vietnam, or at Korea, sorry, and he said, this was a military failure, right? We spent so much money on this war. We spent so much money on building up all these arms for this war, and it was a failure. But then he's shown the CIA overthrowing the democratically elected government of Mossadegh in Iran in 1953. He's shown Guatemala in 1954. And then he's probably privy to the plans to overthrow Lumumba in Congo in 1960. Mm-hmm. So what you see here is a failure of conventional militaries and a victory and a cunning ability at getting successes by the CIA. So what does the military-industrial complex speech tell us? Oh, the defense spending is not a great way to spend our budget. It's a waste of money. We could be spending way less money on the CIA to do these covert operations and get better results. Mm-hmm. It's fairly cynical thinking. It's some would say conspiratorial thinking, but that's my perspective on the whole military-industrial complex speech from Eisenhower.
I mean, it's business,
Exactly.
That just makes sense from a business perspective, which. At the end of the day, a state is generating income, and it has to, it has to decide what it wants to do with that income in the most economical. Well, I mean, things definitely get complicated there in terms of, are they using it honestly and correctly? But no, that you have just such a unique take on these things. Maybe it's not I get it is unique just because people don't talk about this stuff really online.
Yeah, I mean,
like I think you pick such a good niche and one that really people are hungry for, and that there's not enough demand, there's not enough supply to meet demand on.
Well, I try to bring rigor to this topic as well, because I think a lot of there is a lot of talk about, you know, the CIA and this sort of stuff online, but it doesn't really take a scholarly approach to it. It oftentimes it's, well, I don't mean that in any way. Like, I mean, I think that what you're doing is important as well for just getting the facts out there. But like, I mean, fundamentally, like, a lot of this talk about CIA just devolves into these sort of conspiracy maps that are based more on emotion than on actual material facts. And I try to keep emotion out of my video. I try to keep it fairly, or my videos, I try to keep fairly rooted in material facts of money and power run the world. I mean, that's it's an essentially a realist position, and I do fundamentally believe that that's how most of these events boil down to, is just maintaining the same hegemonic system that has existed since, well, essentially the birth of capitalism, and yeah, so.
Well, you do a great job at it, man. You do a great job at it, and I think that you're right about that, and that's what impresses me so much, is just the scholarly depth that you give to it. It's super unique, and the fact that it's like the videos are like well made as well, like they're well edited, visually pleasing, like you find good solid like B-roll and stuff.
Yeah, like I actually studied film. I studied film in undergrad, so
that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
This is all sort of residual from what I learned from that. I mean, I wanted to work in film, and then I sort of realized that where I was living was not really a place that film existed, as I'm sure many film graduates feel. So I decided to retrain into a more, I guess, profitable or more
modern,
or more, I guess, a field that was more suited to the place where I live versus having to move to.
You mean with YouTube?
I mean, just like when I did my master's, like I restudied, and I just did like,
oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, did something different, just to just have a more variety of skills that I could apply to different work environments, instead of just having, you know, film and media background, which just
if you're not in a place where you can do film and media, it doesn't.
No, exactly. Like, I don't live in Hollywood, I don't live in Vancouver, so it's like yeah.
Interesting. I never went to college, and do not intend on doing so. Did you have a good experience with it?
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy reading. I enjoy studying.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a pretty I'm a pretty big bookworm. Like, I just read a lot in general. So I found it to be fairly straightforward. I've always been pretty good at forming arguments as well, so I mean, I didn't really find it to be too difficult. Like, film and media, like, it's my passion, honestly. Like, beyond all this like CIA stuff that I've gotten so deep into, like, I love films. Like, I've watched a ton of films. I love talking about films. I love going to the theaters as well. Like, it's always been something I've really enjoyed. So it was honestly, a lot of the studying was more didn't really feel like much of a job or much like labor, because it was just something I was really enjoying at the time, and being able to work with cameras too was great.
That's good. It definitely sounds like it would be very very interesting to go for something like film or art in that capacity. I was always just more of the mindset that my time would most likely be better spent just pursuing those endeavors, as opposed to mostly just the financial investment that it would take for me to. I don't know how it is in Canada, actually. Is it comparable to the United States in its education system? Is it quite very unreasonably expensive over there as well?
Not to the same degree at all. Not to the same degree at all. Like, I've heard of, like, you know, tuition fees in the US being like, what, like 30 or 40 grand like a year. Like, is that
that's pretty. Yeah, that's not
standard?
Even like on the high end.
Yeah, like, here a typical year of tuition would cost like 8,000 to 10,000 Canadian. So like 6,000 to 8,000 American.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's a man might have gone to college if that was the case here, but I just think it's, honestly, if your parents aren't paying for it, I think it's a bit of a, well, one, I think it's a very unreasonable financial choice to force on an 18-year-old, really a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old, because you have to do so much planning and searching for places before you just pull the trigger with it. And there's just I think that it's going away now, at least in this country, because of how ridiculously expensive it is.
Yes.
But people kind of, when I was growing up, kind of made you feel like a dumb piece of lazy shit if you weren't like planning on going to college. And I always just thought, like, you know, I don't really think that I have like negative value as a person because I don't want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on having to like do more homework. Like I'm ADHD personally, so like I have to be very interested in what I am researching and talking about, and really in any of my endeavors to get an adequate amount of effort into it. And I just felt very strongly that I would have failed out without having, you know, parents around to force me to do schoolwork. So
well, I think you're totally right. Like if I had to spend what the regular college tuition fees are in the US, I probably would not have studied film, and I probably would have been more probably less happy as well, honestly, because I would have probably picked something where it's like, okay, look, like I need to pay back this, you know, what's going to end up being 150, 200 grand worth of student loan debts afterwards. So it's like, I better be able to find something that's going to give me some income like right away. Right. Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of the problem with the American education system in terms of higher education, is that it disincentivizes people from studying really what they want to study, and instead pushes people, at least average people, you know, not people that come from, you know, very fortunate backgrounds, but like average people, you know, working people, it forces them to either make the choice like you had to make, you know, do I go to college and study something I don't like to make money, or do I not go to college and not be burdened with all this debt? And I think that's a totally fair, you know, like choice to have to make. And I think it's ridiculous.
If you have your heart set on being a scientist or a doctor or a lawyer or like this very specific like niche of employment that makes a lot of money, and well, the scientist not always, but just something that requires a lot of education, and you know what you want to do and you're going there, it makes sense. It's still unreasonably expensive, but it makes sense. But I always wanted to be a stand-up comedian. I always wanted to do something with comedy. That's why I moved to Austin, Texas, was to do stand-up, and I kind of did the YouTube stuff as like an afterthought, and now I enjoy it much more because you have so much control over it. The barrier to entry financially is much lower.
Yes.
Although there's nothing like the atmosphere going and doing stand-up comedy, like just the people around, and it's spectacular, but it's not something that is realistic to do professionally, really.
I mean, man, it's insanely challenging too. Like, kudos to you for even attempting, because like I can't imagine going up there and just bombing, you know?
It is not fun.
No, I bet.
But I've always been kind of a adrenaline junkie. Yeah. Which helps with the nerves are. I chase that, and as far as like the actual just the bombing, it's just, I don't know. I've had to move around a lot as a child. I think that's what kind of turned me into like a natural performer. Is I always had to make new friends constantly every couple of years, because my parents would be a military family. We'd have to move constantly, so I kind of used humor as a crutch to like almost deal with my emotions and not have to deal with my emotions, and then also just as a way to get people to like associate with me so I wouldn't be lonely. And so I've gotten very used to rejection and all the things that would come along with like bombing, where it's like after you do it a couple of times, it's just like I expect to bomb, and then I am pleasantly surprised if it doesn't go that way, which it hasn't for me, really, at least as far. I guess I'll put it like this. When you see people bomb really hard, and it makes you feel a lot better, because I've seen some people it's uncomfortable to look at. You have to go to the bathroom or something, like you got to leave because it's so painful to watch. And that's just, I've always had at least a level of competence where that has not happened to me. So Yeah. I'm glad that I get to do something relating to comedy now, though, for like, it's not my main job, but at least, I don't know, it's very fulfilling.
Well, definitely. I mean, it must be good practice too if you ever want to get back into stand up, even like just like casually, you know, just having to like write jokes. Like, I mean, you basically have a joke for every single entry on the iceberg. If not a joke, some quip, right? And I mean, that's, you know, that's a lot of writing. I mean, and even just narrowing it down to, you know, your 10 best, you know, that can become almost a set in some cases.
I don't even do a second draft with my YouTube videos.
Really?
Yeah. All my videos are okay. So like my process is that I will write. I'll usually collect notes on the entry that I'm doing, and then, or really whatever I'm talking about, and then I will write kind of based off of that curated list of notes, and I will make it funny from that. And then I come back to the script to like collect all the visuals that I will need, kind of like as I go with the script. So when I'm going back to like collect assets, I'll fix stuff or I'll do a little bit of punch up, but I don't know. I don't do, like I said, I'm ADHD. So like when something becomes like work to me, it just like doesn't get done. And like rewrites have always kind of felt like that. So I always just kind of make sure that it's good the first time around. So I don't really narrow anything down as far as that goes, which works a lot better for YouTube than with stand-up, because stand-up, it just everything, like it has to be really funny. You get like 3 or 4 minutes to be really funny in front of real people. And with YouTube, I can rely on the information. The information gives me a lot of content to work with, because that's another thing that's so difficult with stand-up is you're just pulling shit out of your ass. Like you're not...
It's just words.
It's just, yeah, like you start with nothing and you have to be funny from that, you know. It's helped my writing immensely with jokes to pick writing based off of historical topics has taught me to pick a topic to make stand-up about instead of just kind of, I don't know, like winging it in a sense. But
I mean, it's impressive that you can go off of notes, like, because I need it to be like pretty much exactly what I'm going to say on camera, or else there's you know? It
is. No, mine's scripted out fully.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I just don't do a second draft of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's, fair enough. Yeah. Because otherwise, like, I've tried to go off the cuff before and just with like basic bullets, and it never comes out as good as if I put it out on paper exactly how I like it, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. I still have ums and uhs in there as well, and that's a big reason for like how many takes I do of the stuff. But just putting at least 100 hours into recording stuff now, as you know, you get better at it. And I do stuff off the cuff now, jokes mostly. And it's fun, super fun to do stuff like that now that I'm comfortable with it. It used to be that it was like letter of the word, everything on the paper was what I would say, kind of robotically, but now it's a lot easier.
See, it's improvement.
Yeah.
It's all about growth and making sure every video is better than the last. And I guess I kind of want to ask you, how much did you know about the CIA before doing the iceberg? Nothing. Like the bear, you know.
Well, I mean, Kennedy, I knew, I knew the I saw it as a conspiracy that they like killed JFK. Like I was completely uninitiated with really anything that I knew that MK Ultra was a thing, and like the basic outline of what went down. I knew a bit about black sites and Guantanamo Bay and like some of the stuff that goes down in the Middle East primarily went down in a certain time period in the Middle East. I
mean, we were alive for that too, right? I mean, we saw that shit on TV, you know, we heard about it in the news. Like, even if we were just kids, you know, it's like, it was still like, I mean, we both grew up with the Iraq War, you know, like that was our generation.
So I just turned 22, so we're like about the same.
Oh, okay. So you're a bit younger than me. Yeah. But like,
just a bit.
Like, I remember like sitting in the living room, like growing up and seeing tanks in the Middle East and being like, what is going on? Like, you know, Like
Yeah.
that was like that. It sounds crazy to say, but like I must have been like 6 or 7 years old, and like that was the moment where I was just like, why are there American soldiers in the desert right now? It just did not compute in my brain, and from there I continue to sort of ask myself why, why is this happening? And I mean, it's impressive that you didn't know all like the details of the stuff you were talking about, because you sound very authoritative in the videos. And I mean, I guess you are now at this point. I mean, you've researched the entire iceberg. You kind of have the full picture. Like, what is your takeaway?
Well, I kind of research per entry. So even like now, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Like when I get to an entry, like I just did the Olaf Palme assassination, pretty much was the last thing I worked on. And when I got to that, I don't know what the fuck, I don't know anything about it pretty much. So I have to like literally get all the info before I get to writing about it with the iceberg. And the fact that I am so authoritative about it has made me not trust other people on YouTube, because like when I started making content, it made me realize that like you can't really trust information, period. And then you add the extra layer of information on the internet. And then now you have the extra layer of like people that are making like YouTube videos. Like I always just used to if somebody had an air of confidence in what they're saying and the production quality's high and all that, I was like, well, that's probably fact. Like that's probably true. And just knowing that like I'm a fucking kind of a dumbass in a lot of respects. And like, I'm just saying this information, which I do my best to make sure that everything is accurate. I certainly don't like spread misinformation, at least intentionally. But like the thing with stuff like this is it's so damn complicated that to really get a full picture is damn near impossible, especially with the time constraints that I have for research. So especially as the iceberg gets deeper, you pointed out to me that the iceberg isn't really set up like a traditional one where it's based on obscurity. It's really more based on complexity.
Yes.
Until you get to the last tier, and then he just threw a whole bunch of like stuff that, are like, not proven, like neon green entries. But
I mean, that's some like once you get to the bottom there, it's all like very tinfoil hat. Like, like
I'll probably
full on.
I have a tinfoil hat that I wore for like 1 bit, so I'll probably just keep that on for the whole last tier of the iceberg.
Honestly, it might be for the best. Yeah. I mean, what's your takeaway though? Like, I'm curious. Like, what do you like? Like, you've gone deep, man. Like, you've done Timber Sycamore. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You've done like Gladio. You've done. You've done Iran Contra, a lot of Iran Contra stuff.
Was
Indonesia.
Really, I mean, it definitely you know what? I can't say that I'm particularly surprised, honestly, from like I know a lot more about the specifics now, but I always knew that the CIA was this corrupt pseudo. People describe it as like a terrorist organization. Yeah. And in simply the fact, yes, they have like committed and been supportive behind state terrorism. So I guess you could say that, but I am shocked by some of the blatantness and some of the sheer depravity that they've been behind supporting strictly for, as I always say in my videos, shitting on the heads of communists. But I guess the takeaway is that I wasn't really particularly surprised with just. I don't know. I always knew. I've seen American Dad. I always knew that they were this wacky ass, fucking like off the wall Looney Tunes-esque organization, and that's why I wanted to do the iceberg, even though I didn't, have a lot of specifics about the agency. I did know that it's insane, and in a funny way to me personally. It's interesting covering it in the way that I do, because there's nothing funny about it really at the end of the day. But also at the end of the day, they made an entire pornographic film to frame the president of Indonesia. Like that's hilarious. Like you can't make that stuff up.
They knew their target. I mean, Sukarno got around, right? I mean, like this dude was like a serious womanizer too. So it wasn't like the craziest idea in the world to try to like create this fake film, but it's hilarious that they even did that. You know, it's like
it's even funnier to me that the KGB actually like filmed him doing it too.
Did they really?
Yeah. I don't know how much of The Iceberg you've seen.
No, I've watched like most of like the first and second parts. I've watched
it's a lot of content,
little,
especially when you know all the stuff already better than I'm explaining it.
I mean, it's a good refresher, but I do find like a lot of the time, like I see the entry come up and I'm like, all right, I know where this is going. You know? Like,
I hope you can at least are somewhat entertained by the jokes since you're so into that. Like I'll watch Archer. I've been watching Archer lately, and they'll make some really surface level like CIA jokes about like waterboarding and stuff, and they're so much funnier to me now. But I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
You were talking about the Sukarno KGB connection.
Yeah. So they did it first, actually. So they so here's my understanding of how this went down, right? So from my read of the info, Sukarno at some point on a diplomatic trip to the United States shocked his government handlers by requesting that they provide him with prostitutes.
A classic Sukarno move, some would say.
So what I got from that information is that he must have pulled the same "Ayo, give me hookers" routine on a trip to the Soviet Union, a country where I imagine that request goes over a lot more smoothly. So they took that as an opportunity to score some geopolitical blackmail, and they at this point, it's not my implication. It's on record that they sent flight attendants to his hotel room after I assume he requested prostitutes from them, and then they filmed him. It was a rigged room. They filmed him having sex with multiple like flight attendants, and then they actually presented him this tape that was made like for blackmail purposes, and he was stoked. He legitimately asked for extra copies of the tape to take home and said that the Indonesian people would be proud.
That doesn't surprise me, because didn't like the CIA tape that they created, like they released it and it just didn't have that big of an impact like in his popularity, because everybody kind of already knew that he had this.
That's what I'm saying.
Persona.
That's what I said in the video. I'm like, why did you guys like if his womanizing is so well known of a fact that both like major intelligence agencies of the day like engaged in some way to blackmail him using his womanizing, like don't you think that people already know?
Yeah.
The dude had 4 wives and a mistress, for God's sake. I mean,
I don't think it would change anything in his marital life, right? I mean, I think that it was all on board. But yeah, no, like, I mean, that's interesting. I didn't know that the KGB did the same trick, but it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me at all. I mean,
I'm actually interested if you know, like, how deep your wealth of knowledge goes into other intelligence agencies such as the KGB.
Yeah, like I honestly, like I have read some KGB history. It's not as like my knowledge of that is not as broad. I know that Beria was a real asshole, like real terrible dude, and potentially or actually proven pedophile as well. So that's definitely
he's the fat guy in Death of Stalin, right?
Yes, yeah, and he was like Stalin's like KGB head for the longest time, and I would definitely potentially make a video about him, just because like I think not that like Alan Dulles has any like allegations against him in that same like realm of sort of like depravity, but I think that they're good foils for each other in that sense of like, you know, you have the Russian spy master and you have like the American spy master, and you know they both did some real monstrous stuff on both degrees, and you know, I'm not one to judge which one is more of a horrific figure, but I'd be willing to say Beria just out of the
I think in general that's
pretty
kind of
bad
like
dude.
My reading of the events is that, you know, like all we did. I don't even want to say we. I always feel weird saying we because like I had no fucking involvement in any of this shit. But like you know, especially you because you're Canadian.
I mean,
that must
Canada's
be interesting.
has had its fair share of things as well, and we'll get to that eventually.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's good to see. You must just have so much to talk about. Does it ever feel kind of like frustrating that you don't get to like just get it all out there? Because I have so many ideas for videos that I like want to like cover and write and make, and it's just I have to do the stuff I'm working on first, you know.
Yeah, man, like I've got such a backlog of ideas that are just ready to go, and it's like it's almost to the point where it's like I have so many ideas, and if I did have a format that was more flexible, I could cover so much more ground, but I don't think it would be at the level that I'd be comfortable uploading the videos, because like I need to be comfortable that what I'm saying is based in fact. And I can't just be going kind of off the cusp about what I know I've read in the past and I know I've heard on some random ass podcast, right? Like I can't be like, oh, like I remember hearing about this, because then that just makes my content conspiracy stuff, right? Like that's essentially it. I could go on camera and just...
That is what differentiates you, is just how much emphasis you put. You say, Eyes, if you haven't seen his... Eyes Wide Open, if you haven't seen his YouTube channel, first of all, go check it out. It's Eyes Wide Open on YouTube. We already mentioned it, but just to reiterate, go check it out. It's amazing stuff. He will cite, you know, he'll put do you still do this with the number on screen, like to the specific source in your bibliography that you're like referencing?
Yeah, so I split it by chapter now. It makes it a lot easier for me. So I essentially just like, it's every chapter. So usually they're split into 5 chapters, and every chapter I will sort of like cite the page numbers that I pull from each source. If there is an electronic version, I always link to it. That I try to keep as many electronic sources as possible, just so it's easier for people to access.
Yeah.
So
that's super cool, dude. That's just super respectable and super in-depth, and like something that I wish I could do. I'm just like not that type of person. Like I don't cite sources at all, just because I don't even want to get into it. And like in the beginning of my videos, I technically do have a disclaimer that's like, hey, yo, this is like for entertainment purposes first and educational purposes next. Like I'm doing my best over here, but like, you know, this is not to be taken as fact, what I'm saying. Which I hope gets across, because I'm making so many jokes all the time. I am doing my best to get the information across, but you know, it's not like yours where it's like I feel like I'm getting like a lecture from a professional about it, you know.
Well, I mean, you're covering like you're covering the most sort of self-evident and the aspects of these things that don't need to be cited, right? Like it's the aspects that are in the public record that people understand is true, you know. Like it brings a lot of burden off, because I think the difference is that like what you're saying is like, you know, like for example, we'll take a random one, like the 1953 Iran coup. That's undisputedly true. Like undisputed, you know, it's understood across the globe in all major academic fields and all major academic institutions that yes, the CIA overthrew Mossadegh's government in 1953, right? It just gets a bit more complicated once you have to like get into like the nitty gritty of the why, right? Which I find like your videos, you're telling the, you know, the who, what, when, where, and then the why is maybe you'll say it in 1 line or 2 lines, but you don't really expound on it. So I generally
just kind of keep it as they were trying to shit on the heads of communists, because that's just what 99% like of what I get from stuff is just it was just Cold War politics.
Yeah, I mean, not even just communists, man. Not even just communists. Any government that's trying to like nationalize their resources at the end of the day, right? It was just
which they would. I'm sure in their head they're like commie scum, you know. Is it like exactly? You mentioned Lumumba. He was the one who was, you know, he was like an African nationalist. And from my reading of the literature, he tried to get assistance from the U.S. Because the Belgians, right, were trying to take back the Congo.
Yeah, and the Congo crisis,
and the U.S. were like, nah, fuck you. And then he took money from the USSR, and then the U.S. was like, see, he's a fucking commie, you know? And it's like, obvious. I mean, like, what did you expect? He still needs the aid so his country can continue being a country and whatnot.
And then, you know, the follow-up story is that then they install Mobutu, who is this, you know, brutal dictator that leads the country for, I believe, 40 years. And then now we look at, you know, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, one of the poorest countries in the world, even though they have massive mineral wealth and massive, massive resources to tap. And it's like, it's these moments where it's like the what ifs, you know, like what if Patrice Lumumba had gotten in, a stable liberal democracy had been put in place in the Congo, and they'd been actually able to more equally distribute the sort of riches of the country in terms of, you know, their true resource wealth, which is undisputed. So it's these things like that's what really got me into this, right? Was Iran, Guatemala, and DRC. That those were the big 3 that really galvanized me in terms of this sort of field of research.
Do you think America prefers? Well, I want to say this first. It's just you can tell that this reminded me that you can tell that I did not know basically anything about the CIA because in my first video I was pronouncing it Alan Dulles instead of saying Alan Dulles.
Just a second. I think you have a beep going off here.
Yeah, it stopped. I mentioned it in the first podcast actually, and I got a. We won't even talk about that. Don't worry. It's some watch that's just stuck in my house somewhere that I did not bring into this house that beeps every single day at 40 something for like 3 seconds. And I'm always like, I'm always doing something where I can't find it. And then I forget about it because it just beeps for 3 seconds every day. Anyway, do you think that like, I kind of have not a theory, but I feel I made a point in one of my videos for a little rant for a while where I was saying that, you know, I was just there. It was kind of coup after coup after coup in the iceberg. And I was just kind of putting my 2 cents in about it that, you know, as much as America says that it loves freedom, it on especially like a CIA and deep state level really only values American freedom and even more specifically the freedoms of American elites to be comfortable and safe and kind of have control over the rest of the country. And, you know, I think that America would always say that it would prefer a free and open liberal democracy in any country, but that's way too unpredictable and hard to control in their eyes. I think that they would always, you know, I said in the video, it's like America couldn't give 2 shits if something was a free and open democracy or led by a brutal dictator. But then I thought about it and I was like, well, I guess, I mean, they would really prefer that it was run by a dictator that just so happened to be an American controlled puppet, because that's the most predictable setup that you can get. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I think you have it, and I would go like a step further that it's not about freedom in the sort of abstract sense that we think, you know, in terms of like freedom of expression, freedom of religion, you know, the freedoms that we enjoy here in the West on a day-to-day basis, right? It's the freedoms that the CIA is thinking about is the free flow of capital in a historic sense, in the same historic relationship that has been in place, right? So it's whatever regime will give that free flow of capital between the developing world or the global South and the core in the United States or in Western Europe. And you can even see that it's interesting, and I often think about this, the way that the CIA treated Europe versus the global South. And they understood that in Europe they had to put a lighter touch and had to take a lighter stance. Even though Gladio, you know, was brutal and was, you know, this whole paradigm was incredibly overt and deadly, they still had to take a lighter approach. You know, you can't just coup the government of France and put in like, you know, a dictator that's ready to, you know, sell out all the companies to American investors. You can't do that in France because the French, first of all, you know, they're a developed Western country, but they also understand fundamentally their rights, and they have lived with those rights since, you know, whenever, right? But in the global South, these nascent democracies, you know, where these rights are just starting to be introduced for the first time, it was much easier to find these sort of, or to do these sort of acts, because first of all, there's no media attention a lot of the time on these southern countries, not the same as, let's say, there was a
especially
Madrid.
Back then.
Exactly, right? I mean, most people, you know, couldn't even point out, you know, the Congo on the map when, you know, Lumumba was overthrown, right? I mean, fundamentally, it's what happens there is much less important to the Western media's perspective, right? But second, it just comes down fundamentally to there has always been a antagonistic relationship between what used to be the colonial forces and the global South, and then what became, you know, the Western bourgeoisie and the global South. So there's never been a light touch approach there. Like there just hasn't. It's always been, you know, before you know, decolonization, the brutal exploitation of wealth, and then it turned into, you know, coups, assassinations, and in the case of Indonesia, what many would call a genocide.
I mean, from the numbers that I was seeing, it was anywhere between the most conservative being like 500,000 and 3 million possibly deaths occurring because of the massacre in Indonesia. So yeah, I mean, I would certainly call that a genocide, a massive genocide.
And we never talk about it either.
I had never in my life heard of that, and I had been in a very like, you know, I had been fortunate enough to have several history teachers in school that, you know, obviously it was like the high school system, but they were just very passionate about what they did, and they tried to expose us to stuff that normal history wouldn't get into. I mean, maybe the Armenian genocide isn't the best example of that, but in American school system specifically, like, it's pretty impressive if somebody comes away even being aware of the Armenian genocide, you know, that was a thing.
Yeah.
I get discouraged by the educational system here often. The healthcare system makes me disgusted. An alarm went off on my phone and cut off the video, but it's back on now. Yep. Yeah, just the healthcare system here is like the thing that bugs me the most about this country, truly, because it's just, I don't know. I love my country. I think that any country where you're allowed to say that you hate it, you should at least like it a little bit, because it means that you're free enough to have some form of expression against the state. But it's just our endless pursuit towards capital is disgusting. It's truly disgusting to me. And that's just the plainest to see, is requiring somebody who is dying to give you ridiculous amounts of money to continue to be alive. I mean, that's just really as base level as you can get with it. Is if you're sick, you better be able to pay to not be sick, when just close to every other modernized Western country understands that that's not, you know, that's a gross miscarriage of a way to, you know, structure society.
I mean,
and
yeah,
we're so up our own ass about capital that we just can't do that.
I mean, it's similar, you know, the military-industrial complex, in the sense that it's so ingrained, and that, like, there are so many industries that benefit from the system as it stands now, and that it's so omnipresent in American society. This sort of medical complex where it's all for profit, and there's so many people that you know are getting paid off of this, that it's. I don't even know where you start with that. And, you know, I try to avoid talking about domestic American politics, just because, like, I'm not American, and I try not to comment on it too much, just because I also don't have the solutions to these problems, or I still toy with these problems myself, just reading about American politics and reading about day to day. And, you know, I'm very lucky, you know, Canada does have a form of single payer healthcare, which has been very beneficial to us, but I do definitely sympathize with American medical debt, because I've heard that, like, it can get insane.
It's disgusting. That's really the only way I know how to put it, is how insane it gets. Is it takes people in the worst possible situation and says, hey, would you also like to be bankrupt?
Yeah.
You know, like, it's just the amount of, like, GoFundMes that are just like, hey, I have, like, stage 4 cancer, and my kids are going to be saddled with all of this medical debt. It just pisses me off to no end. It makes me really upset.
And there's, I mean, the you know, medical insurance industry as well, which is, like, you know, a whole piece of this puzzle in itself, you know. Which I've heard many describe as sort of the middleman, you know, like an unnecessary middleman at the end of the day.
It is, and it makes things complicated on purpose, to obfuscate from a box of Kleenex that they're being charged $20 for on the bill, you know, because of stuff like insurance companies. And in a single payer system, you know, the hospitals only have one source to negotiate with, and that's the government. And in the American system, there's many hospitals that are all businesses, and many insurance companies that are all businesses. And it's kind of a closed system where they can just kind of, like, financially jack each other off until everyone's dead. And it's disturbing. I always get upset when I think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you.
But
I don't blame you
how is like, if you're, like, not being an American, I'm always curious how like, we're perceived in the rest of the world, and then, like, also how, you know, Americans, I think, tend to think of themselves as the center of the universe a lot of the times.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like a general perception that non-Americans have of us, is that we're kind of like up our own ass?
Yeah. Like I actually think I break away from a lot of Canadians in this, where we have like this sort of distinct Canadian identity, especially with, like I guess liberal-leaning voters generally, that try to hyper emphasize Canada's distinct uniqueness outside of the United States, just because we get so often lumped in with the United States, as being just, the biggest trade partner both ways, so close in geography. I mean, it's just inevitable, right? I mean, to have like the Western cultural center to our south it's inevitably going to draw some sort of reaction here in Canada of trying to like hyper emphasize our distinctness. And personally, like I actually have a fairly positive view of American culture and American society. I've read so much about the United States that I kind of have gained like a bit of a kindred spirit with like the United States in general, just because it is my main research topic. I'm fascinated by American culture in general. Like
have you ever been here?
Yes, I have. I visited the U.S. quite a bit. I visited New York, I visited Florida, and I visited California.
I still haven't even made it to California. Well,
yeah.
No, that's not true. Never mind. Yes, I have. I've just not made it to Southern California, which is kind of the America of California. It's like, it just seems like it's its own. You know what I mean? I feel like if anywhere in the U.S. like is up its own ass about like entry into the U.S., it's Southern California.
Yeah, like I was there a long time ago. But what really stuck with me, and it's funny because like Canada's the same way, but this is just times 10, is just like the sort of car centric.
Oh yeah, God, I hate it. Yeah.
Culture there, it was shocking to see, to even as somebody that lives in traffic, like to see that like at like tenfold. It's incredible. It's because like LA used to have very competent public transit and very competent streetcar systems that all got torn out in the 50s, I believe, because of the like the construction of American highways and interstates. Which is a shame, because I think public transit's very important, and it's something that I advocate a lot for myself. But
yeah, I don't think that people should be forced to have a thousands of dollar, possibly tens of thousands of dollars vehicle of, just this thousands of pounds of metal that you have to hurl through space at like 60 or 70 miles per hour to participate in society. I think that concept is ridiculous. Being in Texas, which is not a place I used to live in before, they also have taken it to a ridiculous extreme. Everywhere is at least, it feels like everywhere is at least 20 minutes away by car here when I want to get like anywhere. And it's like Austin, like it's like the most like centralized city that they have here. So it's just it's a bummer. I lived in Oregon for a bit, and their public system, it's bikeable, by American standards, and it was really good. But here it's God, it's awful. I'm surprised it's not the same in Canada. I grew up in Alaska mostly, and so I know how things can be kind of spread out and cold, and I would think that you guys would also have a pretty sizable car culture.
So I mean, like the thing is, like it's a ridiculous degree. I think it's up to like 90% of our population lives like right along the U.S. border. Like basically like a massive majority of our population lives maybe 200 or 300 kilometers, so like 150 miles north of like of the border. Maybe more like 500 kilometers, so like 300 miles. But anyways, point being, like we do have that open wilderness like you saw in Alaska, but most of our population, like the vast majority, live in like the urban centers of like southern Ontario, central Quebec, or like eastern to central Quebec, and like the greater Vancouver area, Calgary.
Yeah, I see.
So it's like we do have those huge expanses, and it's a beautiful country. I mean, immense natural beauty once you leave the cities, but we have those same sort of American style cities where most of our population lives, like Toronto, for example, which is like just absolute traffic hell,
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Have you been to Canada before?
Yeah, I mean, I drove, when I moved from Louisiana to Alaska when I was 9, and we drove up the Alcan. So I drove through it, and I like was 8 or 9.
Yeah.
I think it was 9. And, you know, basically my only experience was like staying at like a Great Wolf Lodge or something like that, like some
cool.
water park hotel. And
Yeah,
that
that's
was,
so
like, all that
Canadiana. So
Yeah.
Canadiana.
That
Did you
was
go on the
the
water
only,
slide?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I spent like the whole day at the water park there, just
Good.
being in a different country and being like, "Oh, I'm in Canada," just
Yeah.
as a 9-year-old. But that's my only experience with Canada. And then I've been to like Mexico and a couple. I've never been across the pond. I've always wanted to go to Asia, Europe, Africa. Not so much.
I've been
Africa
to
scares me,
Europe
but-
once, twice, short periods, and I've always really wanted to go to Asia as well. But I've never gone. I mean, it's just the flight in general. Like, I think I'd go crazy on that plane for 30 hours or whatever it is to get to
Oh
East
God!
Asia.
Wow, it's crazy.
Yeah, so.
Jesus, 30 hours, the whole day. Yeah, dude, I can't handle planes anymore. I used to fly all the time, and I just went on a vacation back to Oregon recently, and I feel like, dude, I know that I'm like not a kid anymore, so obviously my surface area has gotten bigger. I feel like they must have made those seats smaller, at least on American flights. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
they feel so. It feels so tight. It feels uncomfortably claustrophobic on there now.
I mean, I saw this concept photo. I'm sure you saw it too, where people are sitting on top of each other, you know, on the planes.
Yeah,
You know,
the
they're-
like double-decker things.
They're really trying to cram as many people into these planes as possible, and you
Yeah.
definitely feel it, you know, after a flight. It's it's funny to look back at pictures of like the 60s and 70s and people flying, you know, everybody smoking, everybody sitting around eating their turkey dinners, you know, with tons of leg room and everything. You know, like,
Yeah.
where have we gone? You know, the jet age is dead. It's now, you know,
It's like 4 people on the whole plane.
yeah, exactly. You know? So it's like just like that level of decadence that I think we've lost. You
Yeah.
know? But anyways, you know, it's funny. Like, I love the show Mad Men. I don't know if you ever watched it before.
I tried to get into it, and I saw like maybe like the first season or so, but I don't remember any of it. And it's visually pleasing and the vibe is nice, but I never really like followed the plot. But that was when I was younger, so I might give it another shot.
Yeah, like it's a great show, but like it's not for everyone in that sense. Like it is quite slow in terms of TV, but like the main takeaway.
I'm ADHD, like I said. I'm very like low attention span.
Yeah, like it's definitely a slow burn. But like the main takeaway, and I think what the show does the best, is just its portrayal of smoking and how omnipresent it was everywhere. Like how these guys are all just sitting around in boardrooms just like smoking it up. It must have smelled crazy everywhere.
I think you just would have gone nose blind to it at some point, but yeah, that's another reason I probably can't watch it, because I would. I got a nicotine lozenge in right now. I'm like sort of a former smoker, vapor. I still do it socially as often as I can, because my girlfriend has also quit, so she like keeps me in line. But yeah, that would make me go crazy if I saw a cigarette every 10 seconds on screen.
Well, you know what I always say, right, is that you know, quitting smoking is the easiest thing in the world. I've done it 100 times.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm on and off again in terms of vape now, and it's like, you know, it's a real struggle. You know, it's like nicotine's a hell of a drug. You know, like it's like the little demon in the brain that's always there. You know, it's always there. Even like, you know, I've quit for 6 months before, and even, you know, you'll get 6 months in, and I'm sure like listeners and I'm sure you can relate with this, where you'll be like at a party or whatever, or out to a bar for drinks, and you'll be outside and everybody's enjoying a cigarette, and it's like, even though I haven't had it for 6 months, that craving is still there, and it's pretty much as lucid as it was, you know, when first quitting. It's a real tricky one.
The only way to get around it is just never to do it.
That's the thing.
Yeah. And it was disgusting to me before I had ever done it.
Of course.
Like, cigarettes smelled disgusting. My mom smoked cigarettes when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And it was disgusting. It smelled disgusting and maybe nauseous and stuff. And now it's like I literally salivate when I smell a cigarette often. Like my body literally gets like, has a hunger response toward how much I want a cigarette, especially if I'm drunk. If I've been drinking, then like, yeah, it's game over.
And especially,
and there's nothing like a cigarette in the winter either. Like, now that I've lived in Texas, it's been slightly easier, but like growing up in Alaska, there is just something about it being super cold and having a cigarette and some coffee is really nice.
Oh, the cigarette and coffee. Yeah, that's an undefeated combo. And there's nothing better, and this is the worst thing to say in the world, but I'm going to say it anyways. There's nothing better than being off of nicotine for a couple of months and then hacking a cigarette.
What does hacking mean?
Oh, this is some Canadian slang, like smoking a cigarette, you know?
Hacking a dart?
Yeah, hacking a dart. Yeah,
hacking a dart.
Cheeky darty party, you know? It's like, you know?
we had a bit of that lingo in Alaska, like some of it carried over, like Ferda. I thought that was the thing that people said in the States, and it's not.
Oh yeah, that's some real like frat boy shit.
Yeah. A particularly frat boyish Alaskan hockey player in my school actually had a custom pair of Nikes that said Ferda Boys on each foot. Okay. Like one foot said Ferda and the other foot said Boys.
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I remember that was like a big thing, like when 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever the kids are saying now, what the Riz, your Riz God.
Yeah. I've definitely fallen. I feel like it's just so much of it is on TikTok now, and I just can't do TikTok. My girlfriend consumes TikTok, misinformation as I refer to her. When
it's really, really clever, by the way. I didn't mention it, but it's very clever.
Thank you. I bring it up constantly on the podcast now. I'm clearly very proud of it, so yeah. I agree. Thank you, though. But she watches TikTok, so like, she'll like. She will basically like watch TikTok and then send me TikToks, but I don't watch them. We'll just watch them later. So I basically just get this like curated feed of like just actually good, funny stuff, which is pleasant. But like anytime I've used TikTok myself or like watched her just go through TikTok, it's just like most of this is like just brain rotting garbage.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I've downloaded TikTok a few times, and I always try to like get into it, and I just never find it to be that interesting or essential. You know, It's like it's just background noise at the end of the day, like algorithm poop. You know, like just get as many people to scroll. And I've never even dabbled in like YouTube Shorts. I've seen you've done a couple of those, or you've clipped some of your videos into Shorts. Like, what's your?
I stopped doing Shorts when I blew up on TikTok, because that TikTok's actually like the reason that my channel has any sort of following, in my opinion, just because I clipped the Black Sites entry of my first CIA iceberg, and now I think it has 2.7 or 2.8 million views.
That's crazy, man.
And most of those were from like within a couple of days of upload. So like it just drove a whole bunch of traffic over there. So now I kind of, especially like some videos are just like wholly one topic, like the KGB AIDS video that I did in between the Operation Infection video was just one topic. So I can't really like cut it up into Shorts or TikToks. And I just don't even mess with YouTube Shorts because they have to be like under a minute long, and that's just not. And plus, I'm already on YouTube. Like, I want the exposure from somewhere else. TikTok just has a much better algorithm for that kind of stuff. So,
I thought about it.
I intentionally kind of write the iceberg entries to be kind of like I could just clip it, and the context is there, so I can post it on TikTok. Instead of assuming that people have seen the entire iceberg or like all the entries in the video up to that point, I try my best to at least have the intro be like catchy, like catching, even though it's the middle of the video, because I know that they're going to be on TikTok.
Yeah, I mean,
as far as like
smart.
money goes, TikTok hasn't been that great. I've made like $100, but that's like, if I was like monetized on TikTok when I posted that Black Sites video, it would have generated like 2.8 grand. It's about like a $1 CPM on
That's pretty
TikTok.
good though.
Yeah, or RPM, I guess. $1 RPM.
I mean, I've always thought about using it just as an advertisement.
I mean, I hate to make you like feel. I wouldn't want to make you feel some type of way about like kind of missing out on these views. But
I know where this is going.
I mean, you would have a lot of money.
I know where this is going. Yeah, and I've done the trust me, man. I've calculated how much money I've lost from those videos, and that's even just considering that they would have gotten monetized. Operation Sunset maybe would have. I don't think that the Blue Suite one would have. I don't think it would have. Honestly.
If you're concerned about that, which, it's I love doing what I do and I want to do it professionally very badly. But yeah, you can just, you can mess around with it a little bit with the check system once you are monetized, and just make sure that your videos, like, they'll be monetized, if you just, if you force the manual review or whatever. Like,
yeah.
And then, yeah, just that knowing that I'm going to get paid for my hard work is just essential, because I had the same thing where I've missed out on thousands of dollars, probably not, maybe 7 or 8 grand,
Yeah.
maybe, from demonetization, but I've still also made quite a bit of money from the rest of the views on the videos that weren't demonetized. And also, if a video is demonetized but you are monetized, you still do get the revenue from YouTube Premium.
Oh yeah, I've always wanted to do that with like YouTube memberships. Like, I feel like that's a feature that I'm really missing out on, and I always had this question, and I guess like it's just a quick Google search, but it's like, do you just get that, like, how does that membership button appear, like, on your account? Do you have YouTube membership, like, set up on yours?
It's so, like, you have to apply for the monetization to really get any of their monetization tools.
Right. But like, let's say I do get approved for monetization. Like, can I just turn on the membership button?
Yeah.
And then not run ads? Like, can a non-monetized video still have that, like, a membership option on?
I believe so, but I've never messed with it just because I don't want to really split off from the Patreon thing, and
Yeah.
I've just heard from my research that it's not really like that great of a, like, people haven't had that very good returns with it comparatively, so I just haven't really decided to put any of my very splintered energy and focus toward it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's like on the earn page to, like, set up. I just haven't done it, like the channel memberships thing.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I mean, I totally understand wanting to have the content be ad free also, like, because it's, I don't know. It's very ultra. I respect the hell out of the fact that you haven't monetized it yet. it could never be me.
Yeah, like, I mean,
like, I was so quick, like, as soon as I hit 1,000 subscribers, to press that button and, like, get everything reviewed.
I mean, I kind of knew going into this, like, it's a pipe dream for this to turn into a job anytime soon. Like, I felt that way from the beginning. It was a hobby, first of all, and it still remains to this point a hobby that people have been nice enough to support me financially with.
Yeah.
It's nothing more. Like, if I stopped uploading tomorrow, I would be fine, and I kind of do appreciate that flexibility as well, not being, like, financially dependent on this at this point, just because I don't know what the future of my channel is going to be. Like, I mean, hell, like, I've been growing pretty successfully at this point, and I've been, like, very, very grateful to even be able to keep these videos up on YouTube as they are now, as I just think that it is important information for people to know, just fundamentally. Like, I do believe that as well. Like, that even if I don't make a cent, like, this is information I think people should know, and I think it helps understand,
You're doing a public service by uploading what you do.
I hope so, and I hope that people do learn new things and do start to look at things more critically, and maybe start to think about things that they never thought about before, right? And at the end of the day, like, I have never come into this thinking about like, making this a full-time job as it is, and I hope that maybe one day I'll be so fortunate to find that way. I think monetization, as you said, is a great avenue to do that, and I think I will look into it after you've been very persuasive. But at the same time, like, I am very, very hesitant about losing my ability to upload videos on YouTube.
I very much understand it. For most of my videos, like, that are demonetized, I haven't manually reviewed them for fear that, they would be age restricted or, God forbid, like, taken down and stuff. But it has to be really bad, like, for YouTube to, like, take a video down fully. Like, it has to be, and just, I don't know, it speaks to how much you care about what you do and the videos that, like, you just haven't gone down that avenue yet with monetizing. And I am, not necessarily even trying to be persuasive, just kind of, like, with my experience about it, I think that it would be advantageous for you to do it, simply in that you have more checks and more connections to YouTube after you do it. But I just hope that I don't get, like, something like bad doesn't happen and you, like, blame me forever as the one that, like, convinced you to monetize.
No.
I hope it goes well for you, brother.
No,
and it'll be nice once you get the paycheck from the views. It's really something else.
Yeah, I bet. And really, like, it also comes down to this, and like we haven't talked about this yet, but like I technically don't own anything I make. Like it's all footage that I did not record. It's very, very it's very vulnerable to let's say, you know, one of the archives I use, which I will not name, decide to come down on me and say, hey, listen, you haven't paid any of the licensing fee for any of this material, right? And at the end of the day, like, I would have to take it down. Like, it would just be over. So if I'm not making any money off of YouTube, it is simply there. Like, the only money I make is that it's released early to patrons at this point, right? That's it. And that is a closed platform. It'll come out for free on YouTube. It's a bit of a gray area, but as it stands now, like, if I start monetizing this and start making money off of it, I think that the worry that then these owners of this content or of this footage come after me actually grows.
Well, that is a angle that I had not considered, because I mean, I use a lot of content that I don't own in my videos as well, but I like to think that it falls under transformative, creative, you know.
I like to as well. I like to as well, but I've heard some horror stories.
For sure. You're definitely being very reserved about it. I say go for it, and it's like, you know, I don't know. I say go for it.
Yeah.
I think the risk is worth the reward, but I've always been a risk taker, so I do some pretty stupid shit.
I mean, you'll notice every single frame that I use, I basically like put a bunch of text over it. Like it's just like splattered with a bunch of other shit. So it's like if it's it at least adds one element of transformation, you know, like I'm putting some text on it, like I'm putting some pictures on it, like that's
smart.
It's something else. But anyways, you know, it's something I'll have to think about. And I think that I think ultimately I will take your advice on this.
Well, best of luck with that. I think that's probably a good note to end it on.
Yeah.
Mostly because I'm full of pee.
No, fair enough, man.
I could talk to you forever, and we should definitely have one of these again. Definitely come on the podcast.
I'd love to. It was great chatting. It was great chatting off the cuff, you know, and we didn't really get too much into Kennedy, which we
talked about it for like that's just kind of how my podcasts are. They're very like conversational. That's how I like to listen to my podcast for the most part.
It was great. No, I mean, I think conversation, like, you know, flowed really great, and it was great to finally talk to you in person. You know, I feel like we've been talking over you know, DMs for a while, so it's good to finally, you know, be able to converse and share stories. And I guess what do you, I guess, just to end on one question for you, like, what do you think the next year of your channel entails, without giving out too much details or pigeonholing yourself at all? Like, where do you think you're going?
Ideally, more content as soon as I can get full time with it, which will hopefully be soon. And also ideally more podcast content. I want to kind of have like a regular podcast once I get, I'm hopefully moving back to Oregon. Yeah, more content. I hope to have like a regular podcast with my friends over where I'm moving back to. One of them works at like a radio station for the university there, so we'll be able to actually go to a proper studio and, like, you know, have like a real podcast.
That's dope.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm hoping to have more of that, especially as I have more free time to kind of do this side stuff. But yeah, just hopefully more uploads, more of me out there, more fan outreach, hopefully. And ideally moving a bit more towards general funny history and stuff as opposed to just the CIA.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I imagine, I hope that the trajectory of your channel is also just similar, that you eventually get to have some more time to make some more content, because your stuff is really your stuff really is necessary information, I would say that.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, you know, yeah. I hope to branch away from the CIA a little bit as well. Obviously still in these sort of like kind of like parapolitics kind of like vein, but I do hope to be able to talk about other things. Like I really want to talk about Kennedy and Nixon, so hopefully I get to do that soon.
Yeah, that'll be cool. Yeah. I'm stoked for that. All right, man. Well, let's definitely schedule out something else when we both have some time again, because I really enjoyed this.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm good to do this. You know, pretty flexible about doing this any other time. I mean, it's much easier than making a video. That's for sure.